All right, forget the so-called climate emergency. I'm far more concerned about the energy one we've got now and the economic one we're heading into this week. A fourth consecutive increase to the official cash rate. More, we're told, to come. Today, the Reserve Bank offered another set of sobering economic assessments in its quarterly statement on monetary policy. The good news, the RBA says they expect the unemployment rate to drop even lower by the end of the year. 3.25% is the forecast. But the bad news is that the global economy, it says, is sliding into crisis and high inflation looks like it's sticking around for a while. So what's this all mean for us here? People with a mortgage and people who've got savings and self-funded retirees? Business columnist with the News Corp papers, Terry McCrann, joins me now. All right, cash rate up, Terry McCrann. That happened on Tuesday. Now this forecast from the RBA today. They say they're optimistic about the future, but this is the same mob who said they wouldn't increase rates until 2024. Well, they got that wrong. Do we believe them?
Well, you can believe them, Peter, if you don't want to face the reality of what's likely to come down the path. I mean, if you take these forecasts at face value, they actually paint quite a reassuring picture of what is in store for Australia over the next 2.5 years. As you indicated, there's a bit of a bifurcation. They're saying the rest of the world is going down the tubes, but Australia will sort of sail relatively serenely through this. As you said, the jobless rate goes down before it kicks up to that 4%, but that's at the end of 2024. Now, go back 2 or 3 years, go back 10 years, and we would have said 4%, that's fantastic. The main reason for that low jobless rate as it is now, and as it's going to remain pretty much over the 2.5 years as forecast, is, of course, the big drop in immigration, because now employers have to employ Australians rather than get their jobs filled by those immigrants. But as you say, Peter, I mean, you've really got to take all these forecasts with an absolute grain of salt, because not only in that generalised sense does the RBA say, well, the rest of the world can go to pot, but we can sort of muddle through reasonably well. Its forecasting is really, has been way out of touch with reality. If we looked at their forecast from a year ago, they forecast that inflation now would be 1.5%. As we know, it's 6%. So you really can't trust and you really can't rely on those forecasts.
All right, let's head to the UK, because we overnight had that decision by the Bank of England. They've increased their rates. They've got an inflation rate, I might add, of 13% or upwards of 13%. Their interest rates are at a near 30-year high. Talk there not just of a recession, Terry, but they've used the phrase a deep recession. What's driving this in the UK, and can we avoid it here in Australia?
Well, the two realities, Peter, that we know are interest rates are going up all around the world. Now, they obviously had to because they'd gone down to zero and they couldn't stay at zero forever. But the second big fundamental reality is that dramatic rise in energy prices, the cost of gas, the cost of oil, and the cost of coal-fired power, where countries still have coal-fired power, partly because of what's happening with Russia and Ukraine, because of the fall-off in the embargoes on Russian exports of oil and gas. But it goes beyond that. I mean, we're now facing the reality of what happens when you try to walk away from fossil fuels, which can deliver cheap, reliable power, and mix it up with all that wind. The main driver of inflation in the UK, which is underlying both those interest rate rises and that recession that is inevitable in the UK and is going to get worse, is those higher energy prices, because energy is the fundamental input into everything. It's into every production process. It's into our lifestyles, and our cost of living. So rising energy prices is going to be the reality, because we've stuck our head in the sand and said we don't want to use the energy which is cheap and reliable. And there is scope.
All right, well, let's just grab you on energy.
Talk about the Reserve Bank quickly, Peter. They don't incorporate any of that in their forecasting.
Goodness me, I mean, it's a massive input. If it's not in your forecasting is not worth the paper it's printed on. Chris Bowen, the new Energy Minister, out today announcing that Australia will have 6 offshore wind energy zones. They're all centred around the Gippsland coast in Victoria. He was the Minister.
We're way behind the game, way behind the rest of the world in producing wind off our coastline. Australia has a lot of catching up to do on 10 years of delay, and these are areas undergoing economic change as our energy system transforms.
Now, despite it being ugly as sin, a terrible visual pollution, these offshore wind turbines, it's expensive. The US Energy Information Administration says offshore wind is 2.6 times more expensive than onshore wind and 3.4 times more expensive than fossil fuels. I thought we were worried about the budget.
Well, Peter, I mean, who could have thought? I mean, we spent 100 years, we just didn't understand that the best place to build a power station is out to sea. I mean, you know, it's the obvious place to put a power station. You put it out to sea. I mean, it's just so insane. And the other thing that Chris Bowen said today was that they'll provide plenty of jobs because these wind turbines need a lot of maintenance. I mean, obviously they need a lot of maintenance. As anybody that's got anywhere near a ship understands, there's a lot of corrosion because of salt, because of the wind, because of the sea, etc. I mean, it's not simply those figures you quoted about the power being more expensive once you've done the first round, but we're probably going to have to replace them in five or 6 years' time. It's just such complete insanity. And obviously, when the wind isn't blowing, even out to sea, there is no power.
Yeah, of course, Terry McCrann, the vast majority of them, all the towers, the turbines, the electricals,
all built in China.
Come from China. We've got
Exactly.
plenty of jobs in China, not many jobs here. Terry McCrann, thank you as always.